She should be here any minute now. Final checklist time for ENG unit number 2. Camera on normal, camera is on normal. White balance done, white balance has been done. Batteries okay, batteries look okay. Is the umbilical cord clear? The umbilical cord is clear. Tape loaded, tape is loaded. Okay, we're ready to film the lady for posterity. But here she comes. Roll film. Film, did I say film? Well, some of the guys are filming it. About half of them. Units from all over the world are filming it. But the others are doing what we're doing, using lightweight video cameras connected to portable video recorders to put the event on videotape. With the same cameras connected to an ENG van, this unit's going live to air around the country.
We're going to have a news cross from the National 9 Division, the Queen in Martin Place, so it's over to Jim Whaley.
Well, Mark, despite the weather, Sydney's put on a very bright welcome for the Queen and His Royal Highness, the Duke of Edinburgh.
This is the inside of the ENG van as it goes to air live. What you're seeing is a major advance in television news gathering. There's no film involved, so there are no processing delays and no waiting. The story is instantly available from the time and place it occurs. From a news producer's point of view, ENG is a revolutionary technique that can change the approach to a story. Sometimes we call it the ENG revolution. One of the first questions people ask themselves when they first meet up with ENG is, of course, what do the initials ENG stand for? Well, I've just had the experience of working for 18 months on the introduction of ENG into this city, and I still have to think about it. It stands, of course, for electronic news gathering. Given the nature of a lot of news stories where there's no second chance of getting a coverage, news organisations have been understandably wary of adopting a technique that until recently was, let's face it, a little unreliable. But it's starting to happen now, and ENG is taking over at a rapid and increasing rate from film. So what is ENG all about? Is it really so new? We've had outside broadcasts since television started. Why the sudden fuss about what's really only another OB setup after all? Well, ENG is a true type of OB operation, but it differs in some significant ways from a conventional OB. Anyone who's worked on a conventional OB knows how cumbersome even the simplest of them can be. The equipment's heavy, it requires a lot of setup and alignment, link gear has to be carried to inconvenient places, parking spaces have to be arranged for a number of vehicles, and a lot of skilled people are involved. It's time-consuming and totally unsuitable for news purposes. Contrast all that with this, a single, relatively small, self-contained unit. The ENG camera is truly something new. It's light, and they're getting lighter with each new version. It can be powered by this battery belt worn by the cameraman. Most importantly, it doesn't need a CC or a CC operator, and it's so stable it hardly ever needs a lineup. The ENG camera is the first to have made ENG possible. These two machines are the second. Lightweight, high-quality videotape recorders. This one with full record replay facilities for use in the ENG van. This one's recording what we're doing right now. You can probably hear it whirring away. This one has a record-only function, and it's for portable use. The third development is this, a lightweight, high-power microwave link capable of transmitting any information coming from the van to a central relay point, chosen for its visibility from a wide variety of locations in the primary news area. In Sydney, the MLC Centre is used. The equipment is all rugged, reliable, and as far as possible resembles the gear film crews have been used to, with the exception, of course, of the link. So there's some of the basic hardware that's used for ENG, but how do we use it? There's a variety of ways. This mode most resembles conventional film technique, except that camera and recorder are connected by an umbilical cord. That's one of the main disadvantages of ENG, and unfortunately will remain so until some sort of radio link is invented to couple the two together. In the portable mode, the crew goes to a location not accessible to the van and records the story on a portable VTR. When they've shot the story, they return to the van and the tape is played back through the link to the station if it's urgent. Otherwise, it comes home with the van as if it were on film. In this mode, the camera and microphone are plugged directly into the van. Switched to line on the van's vision and audio switcher, and the signal is sent directly to the station on the link. Any recording can then be done either in the van or back at the station. The portable videotape recorder is not used. This mode is the one used for actuality coverage of live events. And, since it's necessary to know when you're on the air, a receiver is used in the van for queuing purposes.
Come on over here. Sit down with me.
Also for queuing is this device. It's an off-air and talkback monitoring receiver. The journalist wears an earpiece, and he has the facility of hearing off-air audio, so he knows when he's been thrown to.
Waiting outside Parliament.
And he can also hear the
News
director's
meeting
talkback for
between
any
the minister
special
and the
instructions,
union
such as updates on the story.
present taking place.
There's also an off-air
This
portable
strike
video
under
receiver so he can see what's
already
going
cost
to
over
air.
a month in lost work hours.
A point to note is that when you're recording a voice piece only, in this or any other mode, you still have to send video information, even if it's only color bars, to stabilize the video recorder. It's like providing a pilot tone in a film system. This is the mini-link mode of operation. The purpose of mini-links is to get signals out of areas that would be otherwise inaccessible to the van. Up from a beach, for instance, across a busy road where it would be dangerous to run cables, even from a city office block where cabling would present a difficulty. I'm standing in the middle of a football field right now, and what you're seeing is coming up to the van about a mile away by the mini-link. The range of the system is about 1.6 kilometers, and you can see that it's quite a handy device. Capital city stations nowadays sometimes have a helicopter, and this can extend the uses of ENG very dramatically. There are two basic ways of using it, the first of which is as a means of transport for a portable setup. It's also used for obtaining aerial shots of an event, also in the portable mode, or even for film cameras. And that is the usual use of the helicopter. The second and less frequent use is where you transmit directly from the helicopter live to air. The camera and microphone, note it's a lip mic to help overcome ambient noise, are plugged into the airborne equipment rack, and the helicopter becomes an airborne transmitting platform, transmitting its signal from the onboard transmission aerial, which is mounted underneath the fuselage. So there, in basic outline, is how ENG works. Now to more specific details. Here's camera expert Jeff Morgan.
This is a lightweight electronic camera, and it's made ENG possible. This one's fairly typical of the now generation of electronic news gathering cameras. It's pretty light. You can sling it on your shoulder and go walkabout without too much trouble. The lens is pretty conventional. With the exception of perhaps the auto iris, and if you're not used to the auto iris, you can have a few problems. It can be switched out from auto to manual, and whilst it's in manual, you can still override the manual by this momentary button here. So when you hit that button, it reverts to the auto mode until such time as you take your finger off. Some of the problems you can have is if you imagine a face against a white background, what will happen is that the iris will set for the overall level of the picture. So it'll look at the background, it'll drop itself down a bit, and the flesh tones will probably be too dark. It's quite easily solved, really. You just zoom in, hit the momentary button. So you zoom in on the face, hit the momentary button, it'll set for the flesh tones. Take your finger off and zoom out. Now, quite often that'll mean the background will burn out. With experience, you'll know to go just a bit down on that. The other thing that this particular lens has got is a macro, and you can get into that by unscrewing this and sliding into the macro position. Some of them have 2x converters, etc. And most of them have a servo zoom. This one's got a manual. The advantage, I guess, of a video camera is that you can shoot continuously. You're not worrying about running out of film. Usually you've got about 20 minutes tape. So that means that you can be holding the camera with one hand and operating the zoom with the same hand, usually the thumb. And with the other hand, you can be operating the focus. The other thing is, I guess the other problem, a lot of people, if they're used to film cameras, find this to be a real bind, and it's the electronic viewfinder. They say, why not just a reflex optical viewfinder? Well, what you're seeing in here is the output of the camera. You're seeing any of the faults as well. Okay, this is the level indicator or exposure indicator, and on this camera it's activated by the switch. I'm looking at a grayscale, and remembering that in video white is 100%, the appearance of these vertical lines will indicate exposure. Now they first come in at 90%. You can see them there in the white patches. Now if you're overexposed, these lines start flashing, and they flash at 110%. I'll open it up a bit more. Right, they're flashing. That means you're overexposed, and this is a good indication in the viewfinder of your exposure, particularly when you're running manually. It's a good guide. Here we have contrast, brightness and focus. The focus you need a screwdriver to adjust. There shouldn't be too many problems there. But contrast and brightness always present a problem for people who aren't used to using electronic viewfinders. And there's a fairly simple way of adjusting that level. And that is this. You wind the contrast completely out first. And then take the brightness right down. Your viewfinder's black. Wind the brightness up until you see a raster, until you just see the viewfinder starting to glow. You leave that there. Then you wind your contrast in until you can see a good range of greys. The other things that you see in the viewfinder are the lights. Now, there are 4 in this particular one. On the top, you have tally, that's the first one, or a cue light, if you like, and that says that you're either recording, or if you're in an EFP situation with a few cameras, that you're on air. And next to that, you have a low battery warning light. So if you're running low on battery power, that will come on, and you've got about 3 to 5 minutes to change your batteries when you see that light appear. It also flashes when you're in the standby mode. So if you put your head in the viewfinder and you wonder why you don't have a picture, that little light's flashing, you know straight away you're in standby. At the bottom, you have white balance indicator, and that means when you press this button, in this viewfinder the light stays on until the white balance is complete. As soon as it's complete, you can take your finger off. Now, next to that you have a videotape warning light. So if your tape runs out, you get an indication. This light comes on and you know you've run out of tape. And that's about it for from the viewfinder. Next to it in front here, the filter wheel, and there are various types. Some of them have a thumb wheel on the side and so forth. This one's a little rotating duver at the front, and it clicks to the position fairly positively, so you know where you are. Right, we're in filter 1, which means that's the lens cap. Swing it around. Filter 2, that's for 3200 tungsten shooting. There's no filter, it's just straight through. Filter 3, 4700, which is rather odd, but it puts you in between your daylight and your tungsten condition, and it comes in quite handy. Round to filter 4, and that's basically, for the film boys, an 85 with an ND in it, about 25% ND. But that balances the camera for 6500. Now, let's look at this white balance here. This is the button in front. When you press that button, you'll get an indication in your viewfinder, a light will come on. So you zoom into a white card under the lighting conditions that you're going to shoot in, and that's important. Wherever you've lit or wherever the light is coming from, if it's natural light, and that's where you're going to shoot, that's where you put your white balance card, and that way you balance for the light you're going to be using. Very blue, obviously balanced from much lower colour temperature, so we're going to have to balance under the right conditions. Put in an 85 on a white card, press the balance button, we see the light come on, balance is complete, and that looks pretty white to me. Zoom out, open up the iris because we've got the 25% ND in, and that looks pretty good. The water really is that orange. And that little ducky looks fairly white. Doesn't necessarily guarantee that all the colours will be right though, because the blacks could be wrong, or any of the shadow areas, any of the dark colours, if the colour blacks aren't set correctly. And that's a job for the technician, their internal camera controls. So just watch for that one. So now let's talk about the battery. And the batteries always seem to fail when you most need them. There is a gauge to tell you their condition on the top, but you can't keep turning the camera on and off all the time because you have to keep doing a white balance. So they supply you with a standby switch. Now this means that you can keep power to the camera, but it means you don't have to do your white balance again, and you're not using as much battery power. The light will flash in your viewfinder, the CB war light, and when you're ready to go, back into normal. Okay, low light conditions. Now, unlike film, you can't push the stock, but invariably you're going to be shooting in low light conditions. So these switches are supplied 6 dB gain, and this is what it looks like. You can see that lift there. And 9 dB gain we've got on this camera. That's what that looks like. Okay. Now, this is the centre position at the moment. We can switch it up into 6 dB, and that's equivalent to about 1 stop if you're pushing film. Back to the centre. That's no gain. And 9 dB is equivalent to about 1.5 stops. With electronic cameras, you must remember that we've got 3 tubes, RGB, red, green and blue, looking at the same image. At least they should be. If they're not, you get registration errors, and you can see this vertical red shift here. And you should learn to recognise this. It's a very bad vertical red shift. So if you see that, you know what the problem is. Back to normal. And now we're seeing horizontal red shift. Pretty dramatic, you won't ever see it quite like that. Now horizontal blue shift. and we'll see where we can correct those problems. Rightio, at the back of the camera you have registration controls. Now, as you know with a television camera, you've got 3 different tubes looking at the same picture. To assist you in registering the camera, some of the basic controls are here, the centering controls for red and blue. Here they are. And there's a series of switches and a BNC plug here. So you can put a monitor into that. Okay, now only the basic control, only centering's here because in the field that's all you can really do. The other controls you let the techos do that sort of stuff. Another fault condition that can occur with electronic cameras is loss of one of the colour channels. Now here we see R, G and B present. It's red, green and blue present. But now we've lost one of the colours. We've lost red. You can see obviously blue and green on the tree, blue in the background, and it's got a general cyan cast about it. Now we've lost blue. Red, green are present, so it's got a yellow cast. And here we've lost green. We've got the red and the blue tubes present, and we've got a magenta cast. We've also lost a great deal of resolution. It looks out of focus because resolution is derived from the green channel. And this you can see in your viewfinder. This is a different problem, however, and this is just incorrectly colour balanced. This is how it should look, of course. But if you've done the colour balance wrong, as long as it's a general cast, it can be corrected through a colour corrector back at the studio. And we're going through now trying to find the right colour. And that's about how it should look. And finally here on the handle, button that rolls the videotape. And that's the next thing we're going to talk about.
This is the Sony 50, the latest at this time in portable 3/4-inch field recorders. And it's the one that seems finally to have overcome the so-called weight barrier, long the major grumble of ENG crews. Despite the fact that it's a clever piece of technology, the 50 is very simple to operate. It has 2 audio channels with level controls, a variety of LED warning lights for various fault conditions, and in the pouch on the side you can carry a timecode generator. There's also a tape memory. The whole thing is powered by a BP90 battery from which you can get a reliable 2 hours of continuous recording. In the interest of weight saving, there's no replay facility, nor does the machine perform a tape rewind. If you want a tape replay in the field, you'll have to go to this type of BVU machine. It'll usually be in the van. It has all the normal facilities of record and replay and insert and assemble edits, but you don't use the edit facility in the field. Editing is performed here in the ENG editing room. There are 2 3/4-inch machines and an audio mixer in case mixing between audio channels is necessary. The editing machines can perform the usual functions of insert and assemble edits and division-only or audio-only inserts. Since editing is a field of its own, and since once the material has been recorded, whether it came from ENG or some other source is immaterial to the editing department, let's leave it at that, with the final comment that the same sort of overlay footage should be given to the editor as if this were a film operation. The story should have been shot with the editor's requirements in mind. The story doesn't go to air directly from here, by the way. After editing, it's transferred to a larger tape format for easier handling by the news studio crew. The final area of ENG operation to discuss is the newest to most news crews, and it's the ENG Link. It consists of 3 units: a control unit, the transmitter unit, and an antenna system. Each TV station is assigned a primary frequency on which it's supposed to operate at all times. Other frequencies are available, however, at the turn of a switch in the transmitter unit. The present crop of ENG transmitters work in the 2.5 gigahertz band, and they're fairly high-powered in TV microwave terms. Conventional links require a considerable amount of panning and tilting of the dishes at either end for best results, a very time-consuming operation. With ENG links, you can arrive at a storage site in a hurry, point the link approximately at the central relay tower, and get on air with a minimum of delay, because with the high power available, the angle of point is not too critical, at least over short distances. The mast usually goes up about 30 feet or so, and a word of warning here, beware of overhead power lines, because if you happen to be underneath a high voltage feeder, you may end up getting more power than you'll ever need, and for nothing. This is the 54th floor of the MLC Centre in Sydney, and it's the central relay point for all ENG operations performed in this city. From this level you can see virtually the entire Sydney metropolitan area and some rural zones too. Certainly you can see the primary news area to a radius of about 70 kilometres, which is generally thought of as the range of present-day ENG transmitters. This is a receiving horn, and there are 4 of them for each station, each mounted 90 degrees apart. The angle of reception of these horns is very wide, both horizontally and vertically, and there's some overlap between them, so you don't get shadow zones where you have poor reception. Parliament House down there is a fertile source of stories, and this horn picks it up even at this extreme angle. The horns selectively feed a receiver unit inside the building. The ENG van crew informs the central control room where it is and its approximate direction from the tower.
ENG van to the relay room.
I didn't realise. I can give you.
Relay room, go ahead, each van.
You've got a link up north side, mate. If you could just have a look at it for us, please.
What is the situation, Luke?
North Manly, mate.
Okay, I'll be with you shortly.
Come again? Keep rolling.
Takes a few seconds for the aerials to switch, automatic switch.
The correct horn having been selected, one more thing remains to be done, and that's to choose the correct polarization for the received signal. ENG signals are what's called helically polarized. That means that as they travel through space, they follow a sort of corkscrew path, and by the time they get here, they can be twisting either clockwise or anti-clockwise. The direction of twist will reverse each time the signal bounces. There's a series of buttons on the central control panel to correct for this. Commands once again being communicated by telephone line pulses. It might be supposed that the helicopter signal is sent to the central relay tower like signals from the ENG vans. It would be nice if that could be so. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. The reason is that since this signal is omnidirectional, it arrives at the receiving antenna in a series of bounces from a variety of directions, creating multipath transmission problems. This wouldn't be too bad were it not for the fact that the helicopter will almost certainly be moving. Helicopters do not hover unless it's absolutely necessary. It's too difficult an operation. So the way it's done is to track the helicopter with a receiving unit mounted at some convenient place. Convenient in that it should be readily accessible in the case of a story suddenly breaking. This one's on the roof of the station. The operator watches the results on a picture monitor because the helicopter becomes very difficult to see after a separation of about 3 miles, particularly if it's head or tail on. Finally, however, the corrected signal is fed either by coaxial tails or by Airlink back to the home station. So that in basic outline is the ENG system, a lightweight portable video camera connected to a recorder and plugged into a link system. It's worth noting that the majority of ENG work done nowadays is not done by ENG vans at all. It's done by news cars that are equipped with ENG equipment. The way they get their signals back is they plug into what we call plug-in points. These are located at various places around the city and the country, and the tape is replayed from there. No one is at this stage suggesting for a moment that ENG equipment is as light or as portable as the film it replaced. It can never hope to be so until camera and recorder are combined into one unit. Such a system already exists, but it's still in the stage of development, like a lot of other ENG equipment. There is, however, one definite thing you can say about ENG. It is here to stay.
That scene gives you some idea of the contribution of the designer in film and television. And that's what we will be looking at in this program. It's been said that the designer puts everything on the screen except the actors. Action or hand props, set dressings, finishings, the walls, doors and windows, and the costumes. That's everything except the people themselves.
Mankind has been aware of the value of design for a long time. Even in the Stone Age, cave drawings formed a scenic backing to the rituals of life.
The ancient Greeks designed their theatres to include their natural surroundings. Later, the Romans, with their highly developed engineering skills, built their theatres to include rising tiers of seats and permanent scenic backings. This meant the designer had to work within a more confined space. As theatre continued to change through the ages, so too did the role of the designer. In the Elizabethan period, permanent backing buildings were relocated downstage. Again, the space in which the designer had to work was altered. Although some 20th century theatres appear to be a far cry from the past, settings and costumes have changed very little.
In principle, the present-day drama stage is similar to those earlier acting areas, and designers are still providing sets, props and costumes to create an environment where the players can perform.
But these days, there is another challenge. The three-dimensional representation of reality on the theatre stage is now taken over by the need for a two-dimensional representation of reality on the cinema and television screens.
The designer's task in both these areas is to create an illusion of depth on a flat surface.
The audience has changed considerably too, both in numbers, we can count our viewers in millions, and in viewing conditions, especially with television. Film and television each have distinct production processes which the designer needs to bear in mind.
Standing by.
One very important difference is that film is usually shot with a single camera, where the camera sees only one point of view, unlike television productions, which are recorded by several cameras at the same time.
Oh, come on, old boy. I wouldn't feel so bad about it.
But I feel like such a fool.
Oh.
This is a fairly typical single-camera setup in a studio situation.
Embarrassed you?
This shot from the film camera's viewpoint is the main continuity shot of the scene, often called the master shot.
Would you like another one?
No, thank you. I don't think I'll ever drink again.
And cut. Okay, next one, I think, Glennis.
Okay, check.
When it's completed, the crew can relight and reposition the camera for other angles or points of view, which will be separately shot and then edited into the scene at a later time.
Thank you. Camera on the other side of the chaise.
10 seconds. 9, 8.
A television multi-camera setup, however, must cover a variety of viewpoints at the same time, and the scene will be shot in real time.
Oh, come on, old boy. Don't feel so bad about it.
Ready 2.
But I feel like such a fool.
Shot 2. Camera 3 ready close to
I've upset Julia. Too embarrassed.
Shot 3.
In the control room, the director sees a picture from each camera and selects which he prefers to be recorded onto the master tape.
Would you like another one?
No, thank you. I don't think I'll ever drink again.
And black.
When the scene has been recorded, it is complete in itself, ready to be integrated into the rest of the program. Now let's look at the process of designing. After reading the script a few times and making notes, the designer works out the basic set concept in the form of a rough layout or floor plan. This serves two purposes. Firstly, to set the geography of the set to suit the action, the location of doors, windows, and essential furniture. And secondly, to plan how the sets will fit into the studio. We may need 4 or 5 sets in one day or over 2 days. Some juggling may be necessary, replacing one set with another, even setting one small set inside another to be struck when finished with. Studio space is valuable, and so is setting and striking time. Everything must be carefully calculated in these early stages. This initial floor plan will be discussed at the first production meeting. The next step is to develop construction drawings, which comprise a plan like this: elevations, construction details, and possibly a perspective drawing. The completed drawing is then printed on a plan printer. The first copy is given to the estimator, who assesses necessary money and man-hours. Further prints of these construction drawings are then distributed to the workshop. The elevation can subsequently be cut out, scored back and front, and folded to fit on top of the floor plan to form a 1/50th scale model. The third drawing task of the designer is to prepare a detailed studio floor plan. It shows the precise location of the set in the studio, which has been worked out with the lighting director. This is essential because lighting is rigged from this plan before the actual set is put into the studio by the staging crew. These then are the 3 key steps in the design process. 1, the basic concept; 2, the construction drawing; and 3, the studio floor plan. But a designer cannot work all on his own, shut away in a drawing office like this. He's a vital part of a much larger production team, and in the course of any production, he must get out, talk, and work with a whole range of production personnel. These are some of the people the designer may work with on a production: the designer's assistant, the property buyer, the wardrobe coordinator, the makeup artist, standby props, the special effects operator, and the construction manager. These people are all members of the art department, but beyond this, he will also be involved with producers, directors, technical and lighting personnel, production assistants, and many others.
Right. Okay.
But let's continue to follow the designer through a basic production.
Altogether. Yeah.
Once you've established a shot through it.
Right. Okay.
The couch is here, right, the foreground for the action there.
And the bar over here. And we've got
During pre-production, the designer will attend a number of production planning meetings, and here the designer discusses his construction drawings.
Oh, fine.
A scale model of the set can be useful to help everyone get a feeling for the area they'll be working in.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And John, let's place it in the studio. If you'd like to place it where you want. By this stage, many other areas will also be in progress. The plans will have been approved by the estimator. The props buyer will be out looking for special props requirements, and in the workshop, the sets will be under construction.
All right. We've got a lot to cover in the day, but it sounds as if it's all going to flow fairly smoothly and quickly.
Problems are discussed.
Yes, I think, as a matter of fact, while we're moving this over here, we can have two fellows move the cloth round at the same time.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So
Samples of set finishes, details of location dressings, wardrobe sketches, and other details may also be presented.
Hairstyles. We have this in the first half.
Yeah.
And after the accident, when she loses her hatband, she changes her style to this one.
I'll see what I can find for you. I'm sure we've got something in that line. Oh, thanks, John.
Some props and dressings have to be bought or hired from outside organizations. But it's possible that many items on the props list are already in stock, and they can simply be chosen from the studio prop store.
Please.
Oh, they'll do fine, John. Just great. All the top shelf and half the bottom.
For this production, we found the ideal chandelier for the drawing room scene.
About 150, I should think.
It's a pity we weren't doing Hamlet. Costume designs are submitted to the wardrobe coordinator for making or modifying from existing stock. Shoes, clothes, hats, costume jewelry, in fact all wearable items, will originate here. Even contemporary and straight characters need makeup. Natural skin tones do not always appear natural on the screen. Hairstyles and makeup treatment must match the period, and research is often necessary. Wig making is one of the special skills available in the makeup department. Each hair is individually knotted into the cap of the wig. A very slow and painstaking process.
No, I'm not going to take it off the top. It's just the sides.
This is a location makeup kit. Wherever possible, makeup is done in the studio, but in many cases considerable work must be done on location as well. This was the case with our cave people in an earlier scene.
And the two men.
The special effects department provides weaponry, various weather conditions, explosions, pyrotechnics, and anything out of the ordinary. We need a bottle that will break safely on the set, so one is specially cast from breakaway glass.
Richard, great. And is this the same material as the bottle? Oh, there you are. That's really good. Goes well. Good, thanks.
Working from the designer's plans and elevations, set construction and finishing takes place in the workshop. Studio set makers are especially skilled in this particular type of construction. The sets, though apparently solidly made, must be light enough in construction to be easily movable. And this is a useful innovation available to the designer, acetate sheet, which can be vacuum formed into a wide variety of shapes and details, and when braced and painted gives a realistic effect. The detail of the set construction is quite complex. Here, a camera port has been built into the construction to allow a specific camera shot in a courtroom scene. Sound should be considered when the design includes steps and rostra. Sponge rubber floor covering has been specified in this set to reduce unwanted noise. Sets are built and assembled in the workshop. Then they are disassembled into sections and stored on the scenic runway until they're needed in the studio. In another department, adjacent to the workshop, artists not only paint giant scenic cloths, but also work in various materials, such as polystyrene. So, although this is called the Scenic Art Department, we find a wide variety of skills here. The scenic artist works from the designer's reference drawings or photographs, in specified colors and styles, to reproduce them in full scale. These are the designer's reference photographs for a scenic cloth, to be used as a window backing in a city office. This cloth has a 16-foot drop and is 38 foot long.
Okay.
In most productions, filming takes place on location as well as in the studio, and these locations often have to be adjusted to suit script requirements. In our production, set early this century, Sydney Harbour Bridge is to be seen partially built, and a glass shot is used to solve this problem. A sheet of glass is located in front of the camera position, and scenic artists paint out what is not required, in this case part of the bridge. Focus and lighting must be carefully considered.
Come on, Robert. You've been carrying on like this for hours. It's about time we went home.
And here is the result.
No, thank you. I think I'll stay here forever.
Look, give it up, or do something really dramatic, like writing a beautiful suicide note and jumping off that great metal monstrosity over there.
My dear friend, if they ever finish it, I will.
While the unit is out on location, the studio is being prepared for interiors. The set is reassembled on pre-arranged positions specified on the designer's studio floor plan. This is vital to direction, camera, and lighting departments who have worked from the floor plan in their pre-planning.
Just a couple more skeleton ferns there, I'd say.
Set dressing follows the designer's plans and sketches.
8.
And we're ready
7,
for rehearsals.
6, 5.
Standby
4,
studio.
3, 2.
Sure.
Now here's our first chance to see the set lit and in use. This is television, so there are 3 or 4 cameras operating at the same time.
What's the matter? 3, ready 2.
The designer will have considered space for all this hardware when designing the set and positioning it in the studio.
Let's all have some
In the control room, the director and his team view each camera's monitor and select the shots as they happen. As a production advances through its various stages of pre-production and production, there are a number of questions that designers must ask themselves about the sets and the situations they are creating. Are the acting areas and essential dressings in the right place? Is there room for effective sound recording, camera movement, and lighting? Are makeup and wardrobe harmonious with the rest of the set?
Thank you very much. That's looking good.
Dennis, can we do something with that left of screen area, please?
Yes, I'll see what I can find.
On recording day, the designer must stand by to make any small adjustments. It can be a long day, starting early with checks to see that sets are properly dressed before rehearsals and recording begin.
Yes, he's happy with everything. Oh, good.
When the production is close to final rehearsal, the designer's work is done, and it's all in the hands of the cast, the director, and the production team.
Please, this will be a final rehearsal. Stand by. 5 seconds. Here we go. Plenty of energy. And background action.
Back inside.
I really wouldn't advise it, old man.
What's the matter? Hasn't anybody ever seen anybody like this before?
Let's all have some music, shall we?
Yes.
Goodness sake, what are you doing?
But there's still one last question that the designer will be asking. Is the picture we see on the screen convincing? From a designer's point of view, that's probably the most important question of all.
Give me a drink! I want a drink! Julia! I've cut my hand! I'm bleeding! I want a drink!
At the end of the recording day, the designer can return to the peace and quiet of his drawing office once again.
What you've seen in this program is just a beginning. The work of a designer is diverse and very complex. A designer needs to be part artist, part architect, part engineer. You'll need to be flexible, adaptable, and a bit of a lateral thinker. But no matter what illusions you create, you'll need to keep a firm grip on reality.